I trusted my friend. Biggest mistake of my life.
Before you watch this, think about your closest friend. The one you trust the most. The one you'd never suspect. Now imagine, they already know everything about you. Your house, your habits, your weaknesses. Stay with me because what happened to me completely changed how I look at people forever. This all happened during my senior year of high school. Back then, life felt pretty normal. Nothing crazy, nothing dramatic. Just classes, hanging out, and trying to get through the final year like everyone else. I had a decent circle of friends. Not like some tight, official group or anything, no group chats, no labels. It was more like a loose connection of people who just naturally stuck together. We'd sit at the same lunch table, joke around in the hallways, and sometimes link up after school. You know how it is. Some of those guys were real close to me. Others, more like background friends. And one of those background guys was Mark. Mark wasn't someone I talked to every day. He wasn't my best friend. But he was always around. He'd sit with us sometimes at lunch. Show up before school. Laugh at the same jokes. Overall, he seemed like a chill guy. Quiet but cool. Never caused problems. Never acted weird. At least, not in a way that stood out. Then something changed. As senior year went on, Mark slowly disappeared. Not all at once. It was subtle. One day he just didn't sit with us at lunch. Then another day he wasn't in the hallway before school. Then eventually he just wasn't around at all. I noticed it, but I didn't think much of it. People drift. That's just how high school works. Then one night, completely out of nowhere, I got a Snapchat message from Mark. I remember staring at my phone for a second like, wait, Mark. We had barely talked in weeks. The message said, yo, you trying to hang out tonight? That alone felt kinda random. We had never hung out one-on-one before. Not once. But at the same time, it didn't seem like a big deal. I wasn't busy. It wasn't too late. And honestly, I was bored. So I hit him back like, yeah, sure. A few minutes later, he asked for my address. That's when I hesitated. Just for a second. Because if I really thought about it, this was kinda weird. We weren't close like that. He had never been to my house. We barely even texted. But then I shrugged it off. It's just a hangout. Chill. So I sent him my address. Not long after that, he pulled up. I remember opening the door and seeing him standing there like everything was completely normal. No awkward vibe. No weird energy. Just like, yo, what's up? We went straight to my room and started playing video games. And honestly, it was a good time. We talked more than we ever had before. Played for a couple hours. Laughed at dumb stuff. Nothing about that night felt off. If anything, I remember thinking, maybe I just never gave this guy a real chance. He stayed for about 2 hours, maybe a little more. Then he got up and said he had to head out. I walked him to the door, and he left. That was it. No weird goodbye. No tension. Nothing. Just a normal night. After he left, I didn't think about it again. I went back to my room, chilled for a bit, then went to sleep. The next day at school, I didn't see him. Not at lunch. Not in the halls. Nothing. But again, I didn't think too much of it. At that point, it was just like, yeah, Mark does his own thing now. That night, everything changed. It was a school night, so I went to bed around 11. My room was upstairs, same as my parents' and my sister's. The house was quiet, peaceful, normal, until suddenly, I woke up. At first, I didn't even know why. You know that feeling when something pulls you out of sleep, but your brain hasn't caught up yet? Yeah, that. Then I heard it. A loud, a sharp crash. I froze, still laying in bed. Heart starting to beat faster. I told myself, maybe it was nothing. Maybe something fell. Then it happened again. Another loud noise. This time, unmistakable. Glass breaking. That's when my entire body went cold. because deep down, I already knew someone was inside my house. I slowly sat up in bed. Every sound suddenly felt 10 times louder. My room was right near the stairs, and my door was slightly open. I could hear movement downstairs. Not just one person, multiple. Footsteps, voices, things being moved. That's when reality hit me. This wasn't just someone sneaking in. This was a full break-in. I got out of bed as quietly as I could and moved toward my door. Not to go out, not to confront anyone, just to close it. My heart was pounding so loud, I thought they might hear it. I gently pushed the door shut, trying not to make a sound. Then I grabbed my phone. My hands were shaking as I dialed 911. I kept my voice low, almost whispering, trying to explain what was happening without making any noise. Meanwhile, downstairs, they were still moving around, opening things, shifting furniture, talking quietly. I had no idea if my parents or my sister were awake. Their rooms were farther away, doors closed. They might not have heard anything, and that made it even worse, because if those people decided to come upstairs, they wouldn't just find me, they'd find all of us. I just sat there in the dark, holding my phone, listening, waiting, hoping they wouldn't come up. Minutes felt like hours. Then suddenly, I heard movement from upstairs, my parents' door opening, and almost instantly, the noise downstairs changed. The people inside started moving fast, footsteps rushing, things being dropped, then silence. They were leaving. I stayed frozen for a second longer, not moving, not breathing. Then I slowly opened my door and stepped into the hallway. At the same time, my dad came out of his room. I told him, I called the police. We went downstairs together, and what we saw looked like something out of a nightmare. Furniture knocked over, drawers pulled out, things scattered everywhere. The house felt violated, like it wasn't even ours anymore. The police showed up shortly after, but whoever broke in was already gone. They had taken multiple things, valuable stuff, personal stuff. That night, nobody slept, and at the time, I thought the worst part was over. But a few days later, when the police caught them and told us who was involved, I realized something way worse, because one of the people who broke into my house was someone I had just let inside a few nights earlier. And when I heard the name, couldn't believe it. The next few days after the break-in felt like I was living in somebody else's life. Our house didn't feel like home anymore. Every little sound made me jump. Pipes creaking, the fridge turning on, the wind tapping the window. My mom started double-checking locks like it was a ritual. My dad was pissed, but in that quiet, controlled way where you can tell he's trying not to explode. And me, I was stuck between feeling embarrassed and feeling violated, like somebody had walked into our space and treated it like a store aisle, just grabbed whatever they wanted. And what messed with my head the most wasn't even the stolen stuff. It was the fact that they'd been downstairs for a while, long enough to flip furniture, pull drawers out, rummage through things, and somehow never come upstairs. I kept replaying it in my mind. Why didn't they come up? What if they had? What if my door wasn't closed? Because if they came upstairs, I had no plan. None. I wasn't trying to be a hero. I'm not built like that. I was a high school kid in pajamas with shaky hands and a phone. That's it. At school, everyone started hearing about it. It spreads fast when something like that happens. Somebody's mom tells somebody's aunt, and by lunch the whole school knows. Kids were asking questions like it was a movie. Yo, did they have guns? Did they take your TV? Did you see them? And I'd be like, no, I didn't see anything. I just heard it. People would act all concerned for like 2 seconds, then move on like it was entertainment. But the weirdest thing? Mark. He still wasn't around. And I didn't even notice that as weird. Not yet. Because why would I connect Mark, some random dude from the lunch table, to a break-in at my house. That's not a normal thought. That's not something your brain jumps to. Then a few days later, my parents got a call from the police. They told us they had a lead. Apparently, one of our stolen items had popped up for sale somewhere, like online or through somebody trying to flip it. And the cops were able to track it back to the people who had it. They didn't say all the details over the phone. They just said they caught them. They, as in more than one. My stomach dropped when my dad told me that, because it means this wasn't some random solo thief. This was a group, a crew, which made it feel even more planned, even more deliberate. That same night, the cops came back to our house to talk. They sat down with my parents in the living room, well, what used to be the living room before it got trashed. I was sitting nearby, trying to look calm, trying to act like I wasn't freaking out. One of the officers started going through what they found. 3 guys, young, not full-on grown men, but not little kids either. And then he said something that made me go cold. One of them is a minor. A minor. That meant somebody my age. Somebody from my world. Somebody who could have been in my school. The officer asked if we recognized any names. And when he said the first name, I didn't. Second name didn't ring a bell either. Then he said the third name, and I swear the air in the room changed. Mark. My brain didn't even accept it at first. I just stared like, no, like there's no way. Not that Mark. Not the guy who sat at our lunch table. Not the guy who came over and played video games with me like it was nothing. Not the guy who laughed, talked, acted normal. I literally said out loud without thinking, wait, Mark from my school. The officer looked at me like, yeah, and my stomach dropped so hard it felt like my whole body got heavy. I started trying to connect the dots so fast my head hurt. The Snapchat message. Him asking to hang out of nowhere. Him wanting my address. Him coming inside my room. The timing. It wasn't random. It wasn't let's be friends. It was a setup. A scout mission. He came to my house to check it out. To see what we had. To see the layout. To see who lived there. To see where the valuables were. And I helped him. I handed him the information like a gift. I felt stupid. Like painfully stupid. Because all the red flags were there. Not obvious ones like, this guy is evil. But subtle ones. Why now? Why out of nowhere? Why hang out alone when we never did that before? Why was he so calm? He wasn't nervous. He wasn't awkward. He wasn't acting like someone trying to get closer. He acted like someone taking mental notes. The officer told us Mark wasn't alone. The other 2 guys weren't from our school. They were older. And from what the cops implied, Mark was basically the connection, like the inside guy. He knew the house. He knew when we'd be asleep. He knew how to get in. And he knew the risk. But he did it anyway. My mom started crying. Not like loud crying. More like that quiet kind where tears just keep falling and you don't know how to stop them. My dad's face got red. His jaw was tight. He asked the cops if they'd recover our stuff. They said they found some of it. Not all. And even if they recovered everything, the point wasn't the stuff. The point was that somebody we let into our lives came back and invaded our home. After the cops left, I went upstairs and sat on my bed. I remember staring at my wall, just blank, because it didn't make sense. It still doesn't. I kept thinking, why? Our house wasn't some mansion. We weren't rich like that. Sure, we had normal stuff, a TV, game consoles, phones, maybe some jewelry, but nothing worth risking your whole life for. So why would Mark do it? Then I remembered something that made it even creepier. When Mark came over that night, he kept looking around. Not in a dramatic way, just little glances, like his eyes would drift. He'd casually say stuff like, yo, your place is nice? Or dang, you got a lot of games. At the time, I took it as normal. Now it sounded like he was mentally calculating. What can be sold? What fits in a bag? What's easy to grab? The next day at school, I looked for him. because now it was personal. I didn't even know what I'd do if I saw him. Fight him? Yell? Freeze? I just needed to see him, to confirm he was real. But he wasn't there. Of course he wasn't. He hadn't been there since the break-in. Back then I didn't notice. Now it was obvious. He disappeared because he knew exactly what he did. The craziest part? When I told a couple of my friends what happened, some of them said stuff like, "Bro, Mark was always kinda off." And I was like, "Since when?" Because nobody said that before. Nobody warned me. But maybe they didn't know. Maybe Mark hid it well. Or maybe people notice things and just don't care until it's too late. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept imagining it. Mark downstairs, in my house, with two older guys I've never seen. Them moving around in the dark, whispering, laughing maybe, and Mark leading them like it was normal, like he'd done it before. I started thinking about how close it could have been. What if they decided to go upstairs? What if my dad woke up earlier and walked into them? What if my sister opened her door? What if I had stepped out into the hallway at the wrong moment? Could have gone from a robbery to something way worse. A couple weeks later, we got more details through the police. Mark didn't even try to deny it. He blamed the older guys, said they pressured him, said he didn't mean for it to happen like that. But how does that make sense? He still came to my house first. He still got my address. He still hung out with me. He still smiled in my face. Then he came back in the night and broke in. That's not pressure. That's planning. After that, I never looked at friends the same. Because betrayal doesn't always come with a warning. Sometimes it comes with a Snapchat message and a friendly smile. And as insane as that sounds, that wasn't even the worst bad friend story I've lived through. Because the next one, it happened as an adult, and it got way more personal. You'd think after something like that, after getting betrayed like that in high school, I would have learned my lesson. But real life doesn't work like that. Because a few years later, I trusted another friend. And this time, I was living with her. It started a few years after graduation. I had just finished college, trying to figure life out like everybody else. Job, bills, rent, all that fun adult stuff. And if you've ever lived on your own, you already know. Rent is expensive. Like, painfully expensive. So getting a roommate wasn't really a choice. It was more like survival. That's when Elise came into the picture. We had gone to the same college. We weren't super close, but we were in the same friend group. The type of friend where you recognize each other, talk sometimes, maybe sit together in a group, but not someone you'd call your best friend. And if I'm being real, even back then, something about her felt off. She wasn't a terrible person on the surface, but she had this selfish energy. Like everything somehow revolved around her. Conversations, plans, decisions. She always found a way to make it about herself. I noticed it in college, but I ignored it. Because again, it wasn't serious. We weren't that close. Then one day, out of nowhere, she hit me up. "Hey, I'm looking for a roommate. You down?" I remember sitting there thinking, out of all people, why me? But at the same time, it made sense. We already kinda knew each other. We lived in the same area. And again, I needed a roommate. I hesitated. A lot. Because deep down, I knew. This wasn't someone I fully trusted. But then I convinced myself. People grow up. People change. Maybe I judged her too quickly. And honestly, even if things weren't perfect, we'd have separate rooms. Worst case, I just keep my distance. So I said yes. We moved into a small apartment together. Nothing fancy. Just 2 bedrooms, a living room, a kitchen, and 1 bathroom. Tight space, but manageable. First, things were okay. Not great, not bad, just neutral. We were polite, kept to ourselves. Basic roommate vibes. Then slowly, things started to shift. The first issue? Rent. The agreement was simple. split everything evenly, fair and square. But within the first couple of months, Elise started paying late. At first it was small. "Hey, I'll send it tomorrow. Sorry, I forgot." Stuff like that. I didn't think too much of it. It happens. But then it kept happening. Over and over again. And not just late. Sometimes she wouldn't pay at all until I reminded her multiple times. Twice, I had to cover her part of the rent. Out of my own pocket. And getting that money back. A struggle. Always delayed. Always excuses. That's when I realized. This wasn't accidental. This was a pattern. Then came the second issue. The mess. And I'm not talking about a little clutter. I mean full-on chaos. Dishes piled up. Trash left out. Food sitting around. And she just ignored it. Like it wasn't her problem. Meanwhile, I'm cleaning up after both of us. Doing dishes that weren't mine. Taking out trash I didn't make. And when I finally brought it up, tried to have a normal conversation like an adult, she flipped. Not yelling or anything. Worse, she got passive-aggressive. Cold. Like she took it personally. After that, things got weird. It was like she started doing things on purpose. Small things at first. Annoying things. One time, I left my laundry in the washer for maybe an hour. Not even that long. Instead of telling me, she took all my wet clothes out and threw them on the floor. Not folded. Not in a basket. Just dumped. I confronted her. And instead of apologizing, she acted like I was the problem. That's when I knew. This wasn't just a bad roommate. This was someone trying to get under my skin. And she succeeded. After that, the tension in the apartment was constant. You could feel it. Every time we were in the same room, it was awkward, heavy. So I started avoiding her, staying in my room, keeping interactions minimal. But that didn't stop her. If anything, it made her worse. She started doing stuff that felt intentional, like she wanted a reaction. One night I was in the kitchen cooking, lights on, everything normal. Out of nowhere, she walked in and turned off the lights. Pitch black. I thought maybe it was a mistake, so I turned them back on. She walked back in and turned them off again. Didn't say a word, just walked away. I stood there like, what is wrong with this girl? Another time, I stepped outside to grab something from my car. I was gone for maybe 30 seconds. When I came back, the door was locked. From the inside, she knew I was right there. She had seen me leave. I knocked, waited, nothing. Eventually, I unlocked it myself. But that moment told me everything. She wasn't just careless. She was messing with me. And then, things escalated. One day, I got a call from the landlord. He sounded serious. Like, official serious. He told me we needed to talk. When I met with him, he said, "I've received complaints about you." I was confused. What kind of complaints? Then he said something that honestly shocked me. He accused me of smoking in the apartment and using drugs. I just stared at him like, what? I had never smoked in my life. Never touched drugs. Nothing. I asked him where this was coming from. And that's when he said it. "Elise reported you." I felt my chest tighten, like I couldn't even process it. Not only was she making my life miserable, she was trying to get me in trouble. I told him straight up, that's not true. And right there on the spot, I said, "You can come check my room right now." And he did. We went back to the apartment. Elise wasn't home. I showed him everything. My room, the living space, everything. Clean. No smell. No evidence. Nothing. After looking around, he literally said, "Yeah, I don't see anything." He told me he could always tell when someone smokes in his properties, and there was no sign of it. Then he said something that stuck with me. I don't know why she would say that. I did, because she wanted me gone. That same day, I confronted her. She denied everything, acted clueless, then walked into her room and locked the door. That's when I realized something important. You can't reason with someone like that, because they're not trying to fix anything. They're trying to win. And to her, making me miserable was winning. But what she did next took things to a whole different level. Because a few nights later, while I was sleeping, she did something that made me realize I wasn't just dealing with a toxic roommate anymore. I was living with someone I couldn't feel safe around. You'd think after something like that, after getting betrayed like that in high school, I would have learned my lesson. But real life doesn't work like that. Because a few years later, I trusted another friend. And this time, I was living with her. It started a few years after graduation. I had just finished college, trying to figure life out like everybody else. Job, bills, rent, all that fun adult stuff. And if you've ever lived on your own, you already know. Rent is expensive. Like, painfully expensive. So getting a roommate wasn't really a choice. It was more like survival. That's when Elise came into the picture. We had gone to the same college. We weren't super close, but we were in the same friend group. The type of friend where you recognize each other, talk sometimes, maybe sit together in a group, but not someone you'd call your best friend. And if I'm being real, even back then, something about her felt off. She wasn't a terrible person on the surface, but she had this selfish energy. Like everything somehow revolved around her. Conversations, plans, decisions. She always found a way to make it about herself. I noticed it in college, but I ignored it, because again, it wasn't serious. We weren't that close. Then one day, out of nowhere, she hit me up. "Hey, I'm looking for a roommate. You down?" I remember sitting there thinking, out of all people, why me? But at the same time, it made sense. We already kinda knew each other. We lived in the same area. And again, I needed a roommate. I hesitated. A lot. Because deep down, I knew. This wasn't someone I fully trusted. But then I convinced myself. People grow up. People change. Maybe I judged her too quickly. And honestly, even if things weren't perfect, we'd have separate rooms. Worst case, I just keep my distance. So I said yes. We moved into a small apartment together. Nothing fancy. Just 2 bedrooms, a living room, a kitchen, and 1 bathroom. Tight space, but manageable. First, things were okay. Not great, not bad, just neutral. We were polite, kept to ourselves. Basic roommate vibes. Then slowly, things started to shift. The first issue? Rent. The agreement was simple. Split everything evenly. Fair and square. But within the first couple of months, Elise started paying late. First, it was small. "Hey, I'll send it tomorrow." "Sorry, I forgot." Stuff like that. I didn't think too much of it. It happens. But then it kept happening. Over and over again. And not just late. Sometimes she wouldn't pay at all until I reminded her multiple times. Twice, I had to cover her part of the rent. Out of my own pocket. And getting that money back. A struggle. Always delayed. Always excuses. That's when I realized. This wasn't accidental. This was a pattern. Then came the second issue. The mess. And I'm not talking about a little clutter. I mean full-on chaos. Dishes piled up. Trash left out. Food sitting around. And she just ignored it. Like it wasn't her problem. Meanwhile, I'm cleaning up after both of us. Doing dishes that weren't mine. Taking out trash I didn't make. And when I finally brought it up, tried to have a normal conversation like an adult, she flipped. Not yelling or anything. Worse, she got passive-aggressive. Cold. Like she took it personally. After that, things got weird. It was like she started doing things on purpose. Small things at first. Annoying things. One time, I left my laundry in the washer for maybe an hour. Not even that long. Instead of telling me, she took all my wet clothes out and threw them on the floor. Not folded. Not in a basket. Just dumped. I confronted her, and instead of apologizing, she acted like I was the problem. That's when I knew. This wasn't just a bad roommate. This was someone trying to get under my skin. And she succeeded. Sometime in the middle of the night, I felt something, not heard, felt like movement. Before I could even fully wake up, I got shoved hard. My body jerked forward and I fell off the bed onto the floor. I hit the ground confused, disoriented, heart pounding like crazy. What the? I looked up, and for a split second, I saw her, Elise, standing there. Then she turned and ran straight out of my room. And just like before, she locked herself inside hers. I sat there on the floor, trying to understand what just happened. This wasn't annoying anymore. This wasn't petty. This was straight up insane. I got up immediately and walked to her door. No hesitation this time. I started yelling, "Open the door right now." Nothing. I slammed my hand against the door. "What is wrong with you?" Still nothing. She stayed completely silent. I don't even know how long I stood there yelling. Felt like forever. Eventually, I stopped. Not because I was calm, but because I realized something. She wasn't going to respond. She didn't care. And more importantly, I wasn't safe there. That thought hit me hard. Because up until that moment, I was just trying to deal with it, ignore it, push through it. But now, she had entered my room, while I was asleep, and physically pushed me. There's a line, and she crossed it. That night, I didn't go back to sleep. I sat on my bed with the lights on, just waiting for morning. Every sound made me tense. Every shadow looked suspicious. I kept thinking, what if she comes back? What if she does something worse? And the scariest part? I had no answer. The next morning, I made a decision. I was done. I didn't care about the lease. I didn't care about money. I didn't care about inconvenience. I just needed to get out. I called the landlord, told him everything. This time I didn't hold anything back. The banging, the lies, the harassment, her entering my room, all of it. He sounded shocked, like he didn't realize things had gotten that bad. Then I packed my stuff, everything I could carry, clothes, essentials, anything important. I didn't even wait. I left, just like that. No plan, no backup. I was basically living out of my car. And honestly, I didn't even care, because as stressful as that was, it still felt safer than staying in that apartment. Hours went by. I was sitting in my car, trying to figure out what to do next. Then I got a call from the landlord. I answered immediately, and what he said next, I didn't expect at all, because not only was I not the one getting kicked out, but what he told me about Elise made everything suddenly make sense, and it completely changed how that whole situation ended. I was sitting in my car, phone in my hand, still trying to figure out what I was going to do next. No real plan, no place to go, just trying to breathe. Then my phone rang. It was my landlord. I picked up immediately. "Hello." His tone was different this time. Serious, but not in a bad way. He said, "I talked to Elise." I stayed quiet, waiting. Then he continued, "And I need to tell you something." There was a pause, the kind that makes your chest tighten. "I'm evicting her." I blinked. "Wait, what?" "I'm removing her from the lease." For a second, I didn't even process it. I thought maybe I heard him wrong. Then he explained. Apparently, Elise had been falling behind on rent. Not just once. Not just recently. Multiple times. Way more than I even knew about. And the complaint she made about me? That wasn't just random. It was her trying to shift attention away from herself. Trying to make me look like the problem, so nobody would focus on what she was doing. Everything clicked. The attitude, the lies, the weird behavior. She wasn't just toxic. She was desperate. And instead of fixing her own situation, She tried to sabotage mine. The landlord told me I could come back. The apartment would be mine. And the craziest part? I wouldn't even have to pay her half of the rent. For the rest of the lease. I just sat there in silence for a second. Because a few hours ago, I thought I lost everything. And now, I had the whole place to myself. I went back later that day. Elise was gone. Not just out. Gone. Her stuff? Mostly gone too. It was like she vanished. No note. No apology. No explanation. Just gone. And honestly, that was fine with me. I didn't want closure. I didn't want a conversation. I just wanted peace. For the first time in months, the apartment felt quiet. Not tense. Not heavy. Just normal. I stayed there for the rest of the lease. Alone. And I never heard from her again. But if you think that was the last time, a friend almost got me into something serious, you'd be wrong. Because the next one could have ended way worse. This happened not too long after that. I had this friend named Sam. We had known each other since high school, played sports together, hung out all the time. First, everything was normal. But after high school, he changed. He became that type of friend. The one who always forgets his wallet. The one who asks for favors constantly. The one who takes, but never gives back. Every time we went out, I was paying. Food, drinks, gas. And somehow, he always had an excuse. First, I let it slide. Then it became a pattern. And deep down, I knew he was using me. So I started saying no more often. Setting boundaries. But one day, he hit me with something different. He asked, "Yo, can you drive me to this city real quick?" It was about 30 minutes away. My first reaction? No. Straight up. I asked him, "Why can't you drive yourself?" He said his car wasn't working, which, to be fair, was true half the time. Then he said something else. "I got a date. Tinder." He told me he really needed the ride, that he'd pay me. I didn't believe him. But then, he sent me $10 right there. Said he'd give the rest later. And for some reason, I said yes. I still regret that. I picked him up. We started driving. Halfway there, he goes, "Yo, I forgot my wallet." I just stared at him. "You're kidding, right?" Nope. We had to turn around, go all the way back, then drive all the way there again. By the time we arrived, it was dark. The place? Sketchy. Apartment complex. Dim lighting. Quiet. Weird vibe. I dropped him off. And here's where I messed up again. I didn't leave. I waited. In the parking lot. 'Cause I didn't know when he'd be done. And he wasn't answering texts. So I just sat there, watching videos, getting more and more annoyed. 30 minutes passed. Then 40. Still nothing. Then suddenly, I heard footsteps. Fast. Before I could even react. Bang. Someone slammed into my car door. I jumped, heart racing. Then I heard someone trying to open the door, pulling the handle aggressively. For a split second, I thought I was getting robbed. Then I looked. It was Sam. Panicked, sweating, out of breath. "Open the door." I unlocked it instantly. He jumped in and slammed it shut. "Drive." No explanation. No context. Just fear. I didn't ask questions. I just hit reverse. As I turned the car, I saw them. 2 men. Running. Straight toward us. "Those are them," Sam yelled. I didn't think. I just drove. Fast. Out of the parking lot. Onto the road. My heart was pounding like crazy. I kept checking the mirrors. And then I saw something worse. The guys got into a car. And they started moving. We took a turn. Then another. I turned off the headlights. Cut through side streets. Did everything I could to lose them. Finally, we pulled into another parking lot. Hidden. Turned off the engine. Silence. We just sat there. Listening. Waiting. Then a car passed by. Slow. We both froze. But it kept going. After a few minutes, I started driving again, carefully. We didn't relax until we hit the main road. Then I asked, what just happened? And what he told me made my stomach drop. The whole date? It was a setup. The girl took him to a quiet street, stopped the car. Then those two men came out of the woods, waiting, planned. If he didn't run, who knows what would have happened? Robbery, kidnapping, something worse. He barely made it back. And I was just sitting there, right where they expected him to be. An easy target. I dropped him off later. He never paid me the rest. Of course he didn't. But at that point, I didn't even care, because we made it out. And after that, I cut him off completely. No more chances. No more benefit of the doubt. Because I learned something the hard way. Not every friend is your friend. Some people get close just to use you. Some people smile in your face while planning something behind your back. And some will put you in danger without thinking twice. So next time someone calls you their friend, ask yourself one thing. Do you really know them? Or are you just one bad decision away from your own horror story?